So I'm joined by Hilary Schan, who is standing in the CEC elections of your party. Hilary, thank you so much for coming on Turn Left. I understand you are running as an independent, so you're not part of the many or the grassroots left slate. So just to start off with, why should people vote for you?
Yeah, thank you so much, Curtis, for having me on. Yes, I am standing as an independent candidate in the Southeast. And the reason for that really is I just believe that it's time to step away from the kind of whose side are you on rhetoric, but also because these are regional elections. And so I want to stand on my own record of organising and winning in the Southeast. I led the campaign to win a Labour council for the first time ever in Worthing, and that was on a bold socialist manifesto that was inspired by the Preston model in the UK and community wealth building models in the US. And this was a real dyed in the wool Tory town. But we secured under Corbyn a 20% swing to Labour in East Worthing and Shoreham. And even in 2019, when Corbyn was under attack, we maintained our vote share. And we went on to keep winning council seats year after year before we took the council in 2022. I believe I've got a really solid track record of organising and winning in places that socialism isn't always thought of as being a possibility. And also a history of national leadership as well. I was chair of Momentum for 2 years. So I believe, I've got the skills to contribute to the CEC and just want to stand on that alone, basically.
I mean, you sort of mentioned it when it comes to sort of slates and factions. I mean, given all of the drama over the past year, something we can't ignore. What do you think needs to happen to bring about unity?
I think the focus really has to now be on who has the skills to actually build this party. And I think that's my message to people who are going to vote in these CEC elections is try to put the sort of factional sectarian stuff to one side and interrogate all the candidates. That's not to criticize those standing on slates. There's excellent candidates standing on both slates. But I think what we have to look at now is really seriously who is serious about building the party and who has the skills to be able to do that. And make an effective contribution. Because the CEC is not supposed to be a policy making body. This is not about purism in terms of your socialism. It's about building a body that can steward the party to the next step and to actually build the foundations of a truly member led party. And we need people that are committed to doing that, regardless of what happens on with the results of the election.
So, I mean, your party has 50,000 members, lots of different ideas, where it should go, strategy wise and policy wise. But what current problems do you see in your party? What do you think is holding it back?
I mean, I think everybody would recognise that the mess of the launch and, the drama between Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana has sadly shaped the party and it's entrenched people in their positions of what side they're on. But I think what's also been interesting about the elections experience in this process and being in hustings is that actually when people start to talk, it's the old cliche, which I hate, but the more in common sort of thing. And actually, I think when people do get round a table, there seems to be broad agreement actually about that this party should be rooted in our communities, rooted in our workplaces, rooted in community organising, but also be a credible electoral force. And that to me does seem to be the opinion of most people. And so I think we need to start getting out of the trenches and start getting back to that conversation about how we build something that can do both, essentially.
So, last year, your party reached 15% in the polls. Now, today, they're on less than 1%. So, in your view, what needs to be done to bring back support? I appreciate you are one person out of many onto a CEC board. But in your view, what needs to be done and how can we make sure that happens? Because I think last year there was a big popular support with 800,000 people signed up. And I think, with that, I know it's one particular poll where they were level pegging with Labour, but it's lost support over the last 6 months. So how can we get that back?
Yeah. the heady days. 15%. I mean, the problem is that we're not communicating any sort of vision at the moment. The only thing that people know about your party is the dramas at the top. And so we have to start communicating what we are as a party. And Conference voted to be an explicitly socialist party that is rooted in the working class. And essentially, that is what we need to be. And we need to set ourselves apart by being the party that is organising in our communities. That is the model that we had in Worthing when we won the council. We were listening to residents all year round. We didn't just go out at election times. We went round all year listening to people, and then we got together as branches and we had actions to address the things that people were talking about. So we set up community hubs, mutual aid groups, food banks, uniform exchanges, and then we were able to go back on the doorstep to say what we'd done since the last time we saw you. And we did all of that in opposition as well. And that's the type of organising that turned into electoral success, and that I really believe we can do within your party. And nobody else is doing it. And a lot of that was done under the community organising sort of strategy under Corbyn, where we had people employed to come in and skill up the members on how to have these conversations and how to do proper community-based organising. And I think that's what can set us apart, and that's what we need to be doing. We need to communicate a vision of being a party that is rooted in our communities, but brings our communities with us, and that will lead on to electoral success, I believe. And I've done it.
So I want to know more about your politics. Again, there's many different views within your party. I think it's quite clear that some inside your party have criticised the Green Party for being pro-NATO. So what's your view on NATO? Because I think people should understand where people's personal politics is. And what's your view on working with other left-wing parties?
Yeah, I mean, on NATO, I completely agree with Zara's stance in terms of wanting to leave, and NATO has done untold damage, as we've seen. And the way that world politics, geopolitics is shaking out at the moment. We cannot rely on the alliances that we have had in the past. Look at what is happening with Trump. So I have a lot of sympathy for that position. I think we need to be realistic about where this party is, though, and we are not anywhere near having a conversation about leaving NATO. So for me, it's about what are the immediate priorities in terms of changing people's lives. I'm a community food worker in some of the most deprived areas of Sussex. I'm seeing people every day who are street homeless or working and not able to afford food. Society is fundamentally damaged at the moment. And those are the things I really want to be talking about. Not that those bigger issues aren't important, but we need to be realistic about where we are. Um, and that's okay as well. We can have differences of opinion with the Green Party. We are not the Green Party, and that's important as well, that we define ourselves in that regard. However, in terms of working with other parties, I'm chair of We Deserve Better, which was set up for the general election in 2024 to promote progressive candidates where they could win, and that included Green Party MPs where they stood and where they could win in places like Bristol and Brighton. And I think that's really important. And I think we do need to be working towards formal electoral pacts with the Greens. I've been part of some of those conversations when your party first launched, and was slightly on a more secure footing back then, with leading figures in the Green Party. Because realistically, we need to look at where the left can win and what party within the left can win. And there will be places where the Greens are better placed, and there will be places where your party is better placed. And so we need to be having those conversations, because we are in such a scary place in terms of the rise of the right now, that we cannot afford purism at all costs. We have to be realistic at who can win where to keep out the far right. And so for me, that would be a priority.
You have had a major union backing, the Bakers Union. they've endorsed your candidacy. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I'm absolutely delighted to have the backing of the Bakers Union National Exec and also Sarah Woolley, General Secretary, personally. I think, as far as I know, I'm the only candidate for the CEC in the country that has an official union backing. And I feel that's really significant. And that has come about because I am involved with my union. They are my trade union. As I said, I work in community food. And I've been involved in a campaign with Sarah and with the Bakers Union around the exploitation of community food workers and volunteers who are essentially propping up a failing welfare system. We are running social supermarkets, food banks, warm spaces, advice services, whatever it may be. And most of these services are run by volunteers giving their time for free. And there are currently absolutely no protections, no rights for those people in terms of being adequately trained and safeguarded. They are coming into contact with some of the most vulnerable people in our society, and there's no regulation in the sector. Anybody can set up a food bank. There's no regulation around training and being able to support those vulnerable people, but also themselves, because it can be really difficult. It's really difficult work. And so I'm really proud that the Bakers Union has supported me in that campaign, which is now going national. And we are looking to create a charter of rights for volunteers and workers in this space that will give them those rights and protections. And so I'm really proud of the Bakers Union and to be a member. They are always a progressive force on the left, and Sarah is an absolute titan of the left as well. You know, when they disaffiliated from Labour a few years ago, they ended, an over 100-year relationship with the Labour Party because they saw the direction that it was going. So this feels like a significant moment, and I think we need to rethink what the relationship looks like between left political parties and the trade unions. We saw far too often in the Labour Party how rank and file members would be outvoted by trade union block voting. And so we really need to look at what that might look like. And, my relationship with the Bakers Union hopefully will be significant in being able to have those conversations with the left wing unions if I'm elected.
I think in politics, communication seems to be key. And these days, it almost becomes the most important thing. So, recently your party voted to have a collective leadership. Some people thought it was good for membership democracy. Others criticised it for not having a sole leader to sort of rally behind. And I think both arguments are absolutely fair. But given that they did vote for collective leadership, in your view, and what can you do to have effective sort of communication strategy with your party? Because at the end of the day, given that politics is, I feel like it's kind of a low engagement thing where people just see sound bites and short interviews from people. They tend to want to look at one national unifying leader. Your party won't have that. So how can, in its current setup, what can you do to make sure that actually the communication breaks through on the national stage? Because someone like Zach Polanski, he's made his entire leadership about communication. That's had success for him. Of course, Nigel Farage is a very prominent national figure before he was even leader of Reform. So in your view, what can your party do?
Yeah, so within the collective leadership model that was voted for by conference, there is the role for a spokesperson. And so I think that role is going to be incredibly important and needs to be somebody that can communicate effectively in the media, on social media, and with people in a similar way to what Zach Polanski has been able to do. And I think they've been an interesting model because they have a leader that is outside of the parliamentary MPs. And, I think we should have the same. And I think that is a good thing to have that separation, actually. And so, yeah, I think we do need a strong spokesperson and we need to be outward facing. I've been very clear about that in my CEC campaign. And we do need people who are able to go onto the media and articulate our vision and our politics. And I think that will be incredibly important. So, although I'm fully supportive of the collective leadership model, and I think that gives us a real opportunity actually to do things differently, which is what we want to do. We do also need to have strong communicators who are able to go out there and sell our message, definitely.
So as I mentioned earlier, your party has 50,000 members. Initially, there was 800,000 people that signed up. I appreciate that was just, signing up. Journalists would have signed up to it, for example. But, 50,000 members, it's a decent size. But there was only 11,000 people that engaged in the endorsements of those for the CEC elections, right? It feels that the engagement at the time is quite low, possibly due to the drama. I think it's really important that the membership is really engaged. There's high turnout. So, what do you think needs to be done to boost engagement with the membership?
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's a shame that so many people have felt disengaged. And I do think that is down to the dramas. And sadly, I think the CEC elections have not been able to move on from that so far. And that's why I'm really trying to amplify the voices of the independent candidates. And as I said, I'm not criticizing the slates or anybody on them. That slate politics is it's part and parcel of political organizing, but it has exacerbated, there's no doubt, the sort of which side are you on rhetoric, because of the perceived alignments of each slate with one of the leading MPs. And so, my message, and I've written about this in the Morning Star this weekend as well, is to just interrogate all of the candidates, because actually what this process has shown is that there's an incredible breadth of talent across this movement. There are people that have done amazing things all over the country. And have a huge amount of skills and talents that can take this party forward. And so, my sort of plea to people is to do the engagement. Look at your candidates, get involved in voting in the elections, so that people that you want to see lead this party get elected and move it forward. This does feel like the last chance to get this thing up and running, and to really be a credible force on the electoral scene. So we do need people to, just kind of hold their breath and see us forward.
Hilary, thank you so much for coming on Turn Left, and good luck with the campaign.
Thank you so much.